Shalom, we are here in Jerusalem today with a very special guest from Singapore. We have here today in the studio with us Dr. and Pastor George Annadoai, who is the head of Asia Pacific, who's here to visit Israel and to yet again create another huge event here to bless Israel. So welcome here to Jerusalem today.
Thank you once again.
If I may start by asking, Asia Pacific, what are you guys all about? What is this group that comes to Israel to bless Israelis year after year?
Well, I believe that somewhere in the Bible we have a reason to connect the Far East with Israel. This is a biblical vision that I believe is coming to pass in our day and time. And I would like to live and serve this purpose all the days of my life. So coming to Israel this time around is to further reinforce that conviction within my heart that this is the calling that God has extended to me, and this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
If I may ask, when did this calling come about? When did this vision and this revelation about the love for Israel come to you?
Good question. The first time I came into Israel was 1982, and that was just me coming in here as a tourist. A lot of good things happened, but I must say that my burning bush experience, what Moses had with the burning bush, was in 1998. That was a turning point when I was in Ukraine, and that was for the first time I was part of a mission to bring some of the Jews back home to Israel, what they call Aliyah. But back then I never understood what that meant. But I was part of their team that loaded these people from their homes onto a ship. And that was my first time where I realized that this is something big going on here. And that was the moment when my eyes, my heart was open, and I began to realize Israel is not just another country. The Jewish people is not just another people. They have a part in the plans and the purposes of God. So having been a pastor all my life, 1998 was my turning point. And ever since that time, I've always been looking as to how I can serve this purpose. And each time the Lord was kind to give me just one thing, and then another thing, and then another thing. He never unloaded all at one time. So I began with Aliyah back in 1998, and then sometimes later I began to pick up the burden for the Holocaust survivors. And so that's how my journey has been.
So when did this journey for the Holocaust survivors begin?
2009.
2009. So since 2009, you, as the head of Asia Pacific, have organized quite grand and big events here for the Holocaust survivors. That's year right. After year. 12-12-12 2 years ago.
That's right.
Which was in Haifa, and there was government officials over there to represent, to say shalom to you guys. The 11-11-11, which was in Jerusalem, as well as the 10-10-10. And last year was a special festival or carnival
of friendship,
right before Hanukkah, with the mayor of Netanya. So tell us a little bit about these events. How did they come about to be?
Well, we realized back in 2009 that we needed to come and to make a statement, both privately and publicly. Privately to the Holocaust survivors, but public to the nation at large, that there are Christians who love Israel. Because of the many different things that has been happening the last several years, Israel need to know that they have friends. They have friends who are like Ruth, willing to walk with them all the way, and not like Orpah, coming half the way and to turn back. So for me, this has been a radical turning point in my life, realizing that this is what my life is all about. So 2009, we made a public statement and a private statement. But I realized that in order to reinforce this statement, this cannot be a touch and go thing that you do once and then that's it. Because the Holocaust survivors, given their history, you need to tell a different story again and again and again and again, because they have been living their story for, this year will be about 70 years now, you see. So how do you break that story and then put inside a new story, a different story? You can only do that if you keep coming back again and again. So we started to do 2009, 2010, and all the years since then. But we also realized that what we did was something to honor them, to bless them once a year. And that's what we do. We host a huge banquet. Thanks to Andre, thanks to you for being a part of that generous partnership. Without you, we could not have pulled it off. You are our people in the land, so working with you has been a joy and a pleasure. But what I wanted to communicate is I realized at a certain point in time that what we do once a year is good, but not good enough, because if I want to send a stronger statement into the hearts of the Holocaust survivors, then I need to do something every day. So it was almost a challenge from God to me. It's good that you're blessing them once a year, but how about blessing them every day of the year? So that thought brought me to the realization that is something that I can do, that they can be blessed every day of their lives. And that was when in Netanya we created the Kalaniot, the daycare center for the Holocaust survivors. So it was entirely a Singaporean project, but it brought a lot of joy to them that someone would take the time and invest the money for their aftercare. But it brought greater joy to us, like in the story of the Good Samaritan. We can't just ignore what happened to them. We needed to attend to that. So in the story of the Good Samaritan, the wounded man ended in the inn. So for us, that inn is the Kalaniot. So, and we have realized that this is something that we can repeat all over the country, where it's not just once a year that we bless them, but every single day of the year. And they have 7, 10, 12 years at the max. So we need to give ourselves even more so in the days to come to make sure that they not only die with dignity, but they die fulfilling their destiny. I believe they were preserved, protected. 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. Why did they survive? There has to be a larger reason as to why they survived when everyone else died. So I choose to believe that there is something more than just dying as another person. They had to die with dignity, yes, but it's something bigger than dignity. It's a destiny. So I'm asking God, so what else do you want me to do for them? What else can I do for them? So Asia Pacific is my place where I can rally the troops. These are Christians who love Israel, but who wanted a deeper place in the heart of Israel. Coming, just touching Israel and floating in the Dead Sea, eating St. Peter's fish was good. But after some time, they realized that they are here for something more. So bringing them into contact with the Holocaust survivors did the magic. They realized that this is why we are here. And they keep coming year after year, year after year, year after year. They spend thousands of dollars, take their entire annual leave, and plunge it into the Holocaust survivors. I mean, this is a sacrifice beyond imagination. And that they are willing to do this again and again reinforces my own conviction, this is God. What else can it be? A man cannot pull a stunt like this. This is God, and I give praise to him.
Wow. Well, as somebody who is here in Israel and who interacts with the survivors, the Holocaust survivors that come to the events that you guys coordinate, I can say that throughout the entire year they're very much touched, and they remember your faces, they remember the interaction, they remember the events, and it really makes an impact on their lives.
I'm glad to hear that.
So we thank you for continuing to partner with us on that. If I may also ask, now that you've done 3, 4, 5 events over the past few years, do you feel is there any difference between some of the events? For example, any special guests who come that you bring from overseas, or any particular distinguished difference between, for example, 2011, 2012?
Thank you for asking that question. This year, we are believing that things are going to be different. I think we are breaking off from the past, and we are setting a whole new course into the future. 14, 11, 14 is for the first time we are bringing together 10,000 Holocaust survivors. Thanks to Andrei Gosiorski, and who is taking care of bringing the 10,000 Holocaust survivors. So in partnership with the Helping Hand Coalition, we hope to send a statement not only to the Holocaust survivors, but to all Israel. So we are hoping to have in our audience the President and the Mayor of Jerusalem, the Mayor of Netanya, and hopefully the Prime Minister speaking to us over the video. It's a statement that I want to say to them, that this is the 69th year. Using 1945 as a point of reference, where all nations on the face of the earth can identify with, especially the Jewish people, the year they were liberated, 1945, Jeremiah speaks about the 70th year. That at the end of the 70th year, that God will fulfill his good word toward them. And that God will turn their captivity around, and that God will start to keep his promises to his people. Now, if you allow 1945 to be that point of reference, 2015 is that year. So realizing that we are at that point in time, like Daniel, who sensed that Jeremiah's 70-year cycle was coming to an end, he decided to do something altogether different. So I carry the same conviction that by doing something different this year, we are setting the course for something that we have never seen before, never been a part before. So I choose to believe that 2015 will be a year unlike any other year. And I choose to believe that as the 70 years comes to an end next year, Israel turns 70 in the year 2017/18, having been born in 1948. So the next 3.5 years, I see that as a crucial window that we need to understand what else is in the heart of God for His people, and that we as His people from the Far East give ourselves to that purpose and partner with Him. So this is the partnership that I long to work with, both with heaven and earth, and to see that we are able to discharge our duties, our heavenly duties, our sacred duties towards the Holocaust survivors. So this is where my thoughts are right now.
Well, in that case, the next 3-4 years are going to be very exciting, and in Israel and around the world. If I may ask one final question, which is, Singapore is surrounded by countries which, similar to Israel, are not friendly towards Israel, but also towards Christianity as a whole. And yet you are able to bring hundreds of Christians from all those nations around Singapore year after year. I think it's hundreds up to 500, even 1,000 in 1 year that you guys were able to bring. How are you able to do that? And what's the motive of these people, as you mentioned before, to sacrifice their finances, their time, their annual vacation or whatnot, and just to make this dangerous trip to Israel to be with the Holocaust survivors?
Well, I can answer that question by two statements. One, the growing number of Christians in the Far East. This is a phenomena that is grabbing the world by attention, bearing in mind that the largest church in the world is in the East, in Korea, Yeouido. Although we had imported Christianity from the West, the largest church remains in the East. So the number of Christians across the nations are growing exponentially. Take Indonesia. Indonesia is considered by many as the largest Islamic nation in the world. But right there in the heartland of Indonesia, we have churches with 1,200,000 members, just one church. That's larger than Yeouido Full Gospel Church. And this is in the land that many call as the largest Islamic nation in the world. God is doing some astounding things in our days. So the growth of the Christians in the Eastern nations is the first factor. The second is, in the last 5 years, I would say, the number of Christians who are beginning to understand or wanting to understand, so who Israel is growing phenomenally. I remember 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I spoke about Israel in any part of the churches in the East, I can hear my own voice coming back. It's like an echo. But that's not the case now. Now people are running to hear this message. They want to hear. So what is Israel? Who is Israel? And what's our role in Israel? People are wanting to know. So the number of Christians who are coming here are increasing proponentially, but I just see this as the tip of the iceberg. I think give another 5, 7, 10 years, you will see thousands upon thousands upon thousands Christians from the East coming into Israel and making a solid statement both to the people and the land. I really believe that.
Wow. Well, as I mentioned before, it looks like not only the next 3-4 years, but it looks like the next decade is going to be very interesting.
Absolutely.
And
but what we do in the next 3 years will determine that.
Wow. Thank you very much for your time.
Well,
Dr. and Pastor George, as always, we are very blessed with your partnership and your love for the Holocaust survivors and for coming back year after year. We thank you, and we stand together with you, and we thank you for being with us always.
Absolutely. You are part of our mishpacha.
Amen.